Thank you all for coming to the hearing on consent. I want to thank my colleagues, Senator Schuitmaker and Senator Knezek, for being here. We have the room for only a limited amount of time, and both legislators also have other meetings they have to get to. So out of respect for that, I would ask that people try to keep to the 3-minute time limit. I obviously don't want to have to cut anyone off, and I don't, but so if you could just self-check yourself, that would be very kind. I also, just one last time, want to thank my staff, Lauren and Kathleen, who have done just an amazing job with this today. I hope all of you felt supported, and give them a round of applause. Lauren is. Oh, Kathleen's behind me.
Sorry.
Kathleen actually came back early from maternity leave just to do today, so it really is quite amazing. If you would like to submit a card, Lauren is right there. And we will get to as many speakers as we can in the time allotted. Our first speaker is Claudette Holloway from Lansing, Michigan. Could you run up?
Hi, y'all.
Hello. If you hit.
Can you hear me now? Hi, y'all. Love the red, very empowering. Thank you. It rules the root chakra. I am 61 years old. I am a incest survivor slash winner. I was molested starting at 3 years old by my father, who just happens to be a cop. And I was also molested at 7 by a 12-year-old boy. My sisters don't support me. They don't believe me because they weren't molested, but they were physically, mentally, verbally, and psychologically abused. My mother didn't protect us, and she didn't know. I was told, don't tell, and I was told it was my fault. The day before yesterday, my sister went on Facebook and told her Facebook family that I have been suffering from a mental illness for decades and that people should pray for me. Now, as a result of my abuse, I do have depression, I have PTSD, and just a smidgen of bipolar disorder, but I have been using drugs, yummy, therapy. I've been heavily into astrology and tarot. I'm a professional astrologer and tarot card reader. So she threw down the gauntlet, and I sent this message on Facebook. Hey, FB family, just to let you know I am not ill for decades. I do have depression, PTSD, and just a tiny bit of bipolar disorder. The aforementioned is getting taken care of through therapy once in a while, medication, yum, and heavy involvement in astrology and tarot. Now, here's the real deal, and Paulette, that's the second sister, doesn't want you to know this, but there's a huge elephant in the room, and she doesn't want her FB family to see it. Warning, I have absolutely nothing to be ashamed of, and the events were not my fault, even though I was told it was many times. I was also told don't tell many times in the past, but my sister, in quotations, has forced my hand. I am an incest survivor winner. I have been recovering for almost 30 years. My father started molesting me when I was 3. Then 12-year-old boy molested me at 7. I started remembering all of this at 34. I would leave my body and watch everything from the ceiling. That's how we do things. Again, I have absolutely nothing to be ashamed of because it wasn't my fault. My sisters know, but they don't believe me or support me. And Paulette at least is protecting my father. My mother didn't know until years later, but she rarely defended me or us much anyway. I feel that if she knew early on, he would have beaten her down somehow and continued. Both sisters say he didn't touch them, and that's why they don't believe me. And they also say that he didn't touch my nieces or my nephew. But one sibling in the family can be molested and the others not in many households. Anyway, I don't like Paulette, that's my sister. I never did. She was a pain in the arse when she was brought home from the hospital. She has challenged my leadership as the oldest child ever since. She's a big, low-level Taurus who is a control freak, jealous, and overpowering. I certainly don't love her now. So there's no need to pity me. I feel great.
Rachel Wilson from Mount Pleasant. Thank you, Rachel.
Hello, my name is Rachel Wilson, and I'm a senior at Central Michigan University. I am standing here today not with any intention to seek vengeance, but to bring attention to the sexual assault I endured in September of 2016 by another student at Central Michigan University and how it has been handled thus far. From the moment I decided to come forward, I felt as if those in a position to fight for me are not doing everything in their power. The prosecuting office never asked for nor wanted my input. It was made clear from day one that I was simply a witness, and the prosecuting office had no obligation to keep me informed or up to date on what was happening. On January 17th, 2018, this student was arraigned in Isabella County District Court, and I was promised that any plea bargains would be run by me to at least have a chance to voice what I thought. This promise was never kept. For almost a year now, I've been calling the prosecuting office every month or so to figure out where the case stood, but obtaining honest and straightforward information has been like pulling teeth. Throughout this process, I've realized I do not have to be my only advocate in the criminal justice system. I have consistently stood my ground, but it is time I make it clear that I will not be quiet and I will not give up, not only until I'm heard, but until I'm taken seriously. From the moment I was assaulted, I've taken every step possible to ensure the court would have enough evidence to convict. I've made it past a preliminary examination where the judge found there to be enough evidence to bind 3 felony charges over to circuit court. Sadly, it is beginning to feel as if no amount of evidence will ever be enough. Presence of DNA that matches the defendant's, witnesses confirming I was incapacitated, and obvious inconsistencies found in the defendant's statement are not enough to convince Isabella County I was assaulted. The case was dismissed only weeks away from the opportunity to testify and have my say in court in the presence of a jury. Whatever concern convinced the prosecuting office to no longer move forward will never be worth more than the chance to put a rapist where he belongs. My voice was silenced, my input was unwanted, and my story was invalidated. I am here to express a dire need for change. No victim should ever feel how I and countless other victims have felt. I can say that almost 2 years after being assaulted, despite carrying on with my life and finishing school, that I've gone not even one day without thinking of September 1, 2016. I am beginning to see that healing is possible, but will take time. Yet I've also come to see that healing and justice are not the same things. My personal journey of working through trauma is in my hands, yet justice is meant to be in the hands of the legal system. I've always had great faith in our legal system, yet I am losing hope that the man who raped me will ever pay the consequences for his actions. As exhausting as this process has been and continues to be for me, I will not give up until someone listens and takes action. I will not watch silently as this is swept under the rug. And I most definitely will do everything in my power to prevent this predator from ever having the chance to do this to another woman. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your bravery. Sorry. Next, Priscilla Bordeo from the House of Promise in Lansing.
Hi, my name is Priscilla Bordeo, and I am a local and national advocate for girls who have been sexually abused, and this is why. By the age of 12, I was molested by 2 family members. By the age of 13, I was questioning if I was miscarrying my father's child. At age 14, I stood before a judge and I lied to protect my family. And at age 15, I was trapped for almost 4 years in a relationship I thought was love. And then, in my early 20s, well, I took the road less traveled. By this point, I started to believe the lies that my experience of sexual abuse and incest was normal. I come from a large family, my dad having 14 brothers and sisters, my mom having 8. My dad's father, my grandpa, sexually abused all of his kids, so my dad repeated the cycle. Because of what happened to me as a child, society says I should be in a foster home or on the streets. I should be serving jail time or stuck with identity issues. But I'm not. I'm not broken. I'm not a statistic. I chose to rise above what society says I should be. This is because of my faith, forgiveness, redemption, and my Heavenly Father. I am the first to graduate with a bachelor's degree in education. I now serve as an advocate for girls who've been sexually abused here in Ingham County. I'm a motivational speaker, a worship leader at a local church. I serve on the board for the House of Promise, and I'm a soon-to-be author. This is what I do know. You do not have to repeat the cycle, no matter what your story is, where you come from, or what happened to you. Those things do not need to define you. As a matter of fact, as a motivational speaker, I encourage others to allow life's negative circumstances to refine them. I believe hope is a person. His name is Jesus. And you senators and legislators today can also be people who instill hope by creating the necessary change that is still needed to end sexual abuse. As we know, sexual abuse is not biased to a culture, a race, a gender, or one's economical status. This disease is not a respecter of people. It's actually a very selfish act. As we all know, sexual abuse doesn't just affect the individual. It tears families, workplaces, and environments apart. I believe we can create positive change for the victim and its family through counseling, education on the subject in schools, advocacy so that no one feels alone, reaching out to our local churches to provide spiritual guidance and support, and making room for victims to have a voice. All of these things can play a role into reshaping someone's life. As far as the perpetrators, I believe there is man's law and God's law, and we are to obey both. I also believe that there should always be consequences for crimes committed. But as we know, not everyone gets sent to prison for over 100 years the way Larry Nassar did. Many perpetrators get paroled and/or have served their time. But when perpetrators never get the help they need to get to the heart and root of the problem that caused them to commit the crime to begin with, the cycle continues. I'm not by any means trying to excuse their behavior, but rather I'm trying to identify and develop a plan of action to correct the problem. because while being an advocate is an honorable service, not getting to the root of the issue is a disservice and allows for this vicious cycle of crime to continue. Our prison systems can no longer be adult babysitting. I don't know all of the answers and solutions for perpetrators and felons, but I do know that we have to do something so that when prisoners have done their time, they don't get out and recommit the crime, creating even more victims. So, either we extend the sentence for sexual abuse or we provide rehabilitation in hopes to get people on the right track. I personally believe that rehabilitation should be available for every person behind bars: the drug dealer, the addict, the murderer, the prostitute, the fraudulent, the thief, and the sexual predator. Even if they have a life sentence, I believe we can't leave people where they are. We have to get to the heart of why people make the decisions that they do. I believe God made a way for everyone to make it, and my passion is to help everyone make it too, both the victim and the perpetrator. I have to include the perpetrator because it's the only way to truly end sexual abuse and the damaging effects it has in our lives and communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina Barber from Flushing.
My name is Christina, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I think this topic of consent is really important because when it's taken from you, it changes your life. I'm a wife, mother of 4, a doctor of physical therapy, and a survivor of sexual assault. I'm a Nassar survivor, and my sisters and I have come to be called a sisterhood of survivors. You've seen some of our faces on the news and social media, but that's only one side of us. We truly are sisters as we stand before you today. It's our sisterhood born not from shared blood, but from shared adversity. Few of us share childhood memories together as biological sisters might, but the shared pain has bonded us for a lifetime. We are different and we are the same. We are 15 and we are 40 and all the numbers in between. We are students and professionals. We are friends, sisters, daughters, wives, and mothers. We are bruised, but we are not broken. We are strong, but we wish we didn't have to be. Occasionally, people ask if we feel better now that our abuser is locked away, but the truth is, not really. We still have nightmares, anxiety, depression, PTSD. We have chronic pain, stomach problems, and migraines. We have eating disorders, and we cut and we self-medicate sometimes, though we are clawing our way to health. We feel lonely, but we struggle with intimacy and relationships. We need friends, but we push them away. Most of our friends don't understand, try though they may. We are angry, but we are determined not to waste that anger. If you see us come out with swords high and eyes ablaze, it's because we're determined to fight. We no longer fight just for ourselves, and this is no longer just about one broken man, but about a broken system and a broken society. We will fight until every survivor knows that coming forward is an option. We will fight until every person knows that their voice matters. We will fight until everyone understands enthusiastic consent. We will fight until there's no longer a rape kit backlog. We will fight until justice for sexual assault is swift, consistent, and actually just. We will fight until there are educational systems in place that will help make childhood safe again. We will fight until the next generation only has to say "me too" when they want to go for ice cream. We have seen some dark days, and I suppose there will be more dark days to come, but there are so many strong torches standing in this room. I have faith that the darkness cannot win. Hope is rising. Hope that the next person that has to say "me too" will be believed and supported. Even better, hope that there is not a next person. Hope that our children and yours can go to school and church and sporting events and be safe. Hope that we can give them back their childhood because the brave men and women of this generation will shine their bright torches of truth and justice in such a way that predators have no place to hide. Hope is rising. With every victim that stands up, we are stronger. With every legislator, judge, and authority that says, "not on my watch," we are stronger. With every organization that educates and fights to make our world safer, we are stronger. With every voice that speaks their truth, we are stronger because every voice matters. As I look around this room today, I have hope for the future. Hope is rising. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Amanda Smith from Lansing.
It's kind of hard to follow that one up, but my name's Amanda. I am also a Nassar survivor. And if it weren't for somebody who was 17 years old the day the Nassar trial or testimonies began, I would not have come forward. But watching someone who was so much younger and had so much poise and strength to stand up to somebody who I've known on a personal level and a friendship level since I was young and has been in my family, it was incredible. It needs to be taught in schools that it's okay not only to say no to someone, but to mean it. When you do say no, that somebody should listen, that you know your body better than anybody else. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and if she is uncomfortable hugging somebody, she shouldn't have to. It doesn't matter if that person is family, friend, or some random person. It should be taught in a way that from the time our children are in school and they are around people who are teachers, somebody who's important to them, they should know that it's okay to question what is right. It's okay to be afraid, but to stand your ground and say, I'm not okay with this. And when they do come forward, that they're listened to and they're heard. If somebody would have listened to Larissa when I was still waddling around on a balance beam and a leotard and a pull-up, I would have never been touched by Larry. Hundreds, maybe thousands of girls never would have been harmed. And if somebody just would have listened, it would have been okay. And when they were told they should have done something, it's not okay to turn a blind eye to kids just because they're kids, or you think they might not be telling the truth. There should never be the question of, is my child telling me the truth? It should be, my child's uncomfortable. They're telling the truth. They are listening. The parents should be listening. The coach should be listening. The teacher should be listening. And I just feel that it's very important that it start at a young age. We don't need to teach this to 16 and 17-year-olds. By the time they are 16 and 17, they should know that it's not okay. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. J.D. Torak, that's a guess on the, from Lansing. Is Torak a correct pronunciation? Yes. Thank you.
I'm a survivor of sexual assault. When I was 19, an ex of mine blackmailed me into sex, and at the time I didn't even understand that that was rape because I was taught no means no, but I was never taught that that yes doesn't mean yes if it's forced. And when I reported it, the officer asked me more questions about my sexual orientation than about the rape. That it needs to not just be taught in schools, but to law enforcement and across agencies in power, that sexual orientation does not equal consent. That I was told because I was assigned male at birth, that if I hadn't consented, I would have defended myself, I would have stopped it. And I've carried that with me for 8 years, and it still affects me on a daily basis. I flinch away from my fiance. And knowing that police report was never filed despite giving my statement, the officer spent more time demeaning me and calling me slurs and laughing at my situation than actually doing anything. That when I reported, I received zero compassion. I got no help. The kit was never processed. Nothing was done because I didn't meet with what was expected for that, and because I was not believed. That all of the reasons that I had consented before, that I was masculine appearing, all of that meant that it was my fault and it was on me. And it's still a fight with myself not to be blamed for that and not to hate myself for that. It's something I still carry with me and affects my relationships to this day. I hope that that people now will be believed, because I wasn't, and it's taken me a long time to find anyone who would believe me. And thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say real quick, I think everyone in this room believes you. And I think self-blame, unfortunately, is a big part of this. It's not your fault. And you should know that deep down somewhere, that it could never possibly be your fault. The next would be Stephanie DePonio from the Michigan Organization on Adolescent and Sexual Health from here in Lansing.
Hi, I just want to say I'm really moved by all the personal stories, and I'm going to share more from the organization perspective. So, and really elevating the youth voice that couldn't be here today, unfortunately, because it's a Thursday in the middle of the day. So, MOASH mobilizes youth voices, engages community partners, and informs decision makers to advance sexual health identities and rights. We support the establishment of affirmative consent policies. Our focus on this issue is on promoting a culture of safety and respect by championing policies of clear consent communication in sexual relationships and outside of sexual relationships. We believe all people, especially young people, should have the tools to make positive, healthy choices when it comes to sex. That includes knowing what consent is, how to get and receive consent, and what happens when that consent is taken away. Education on affirmative consent is an effective sexual violence prevention tool. Affirmative consent dictates a standard for consent to sexual activity as a verbal and enthusiastic yes from all involved parties. Teaching youth about healthy relationships, communication, and negotiation skills opens dialogue around sexual violence prevention and increases understanding about how to have healthy relationships, especially when this happens in the context of inclusive and comprehensive sex education throughout all our young people's lives. Within current cultural expectations, silence and passivity are misconstrued as positive affirmations during a sexual encounter. This needs to change. Affirmative consent changes the script for sexual encounters and ensures all parties have equal agency. Legislation for this issue is crucial to prevent sexual violence and will help us move towards creating a healthy culture of consent. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to recognize Representative Tom Cochran, who has joined us. Tom is the sponsor of the affirmative consent bill in the House, so the companion bill. So please help me welcome him and thank him for all his work on this. Thank you. Next, I'd like to call up Rachel Carr, Haley McKenzie, and Vanessa Owaski. Well, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Well, we can bring up another chair if, okay. Are you all coming up together, or are you going to come?
I'll just speak.
Great, from the Uniting Three Fires Against Violence in Sault Ste. Marie.
Good afternoon. Thank you to you all for this opportunity to provide testimony on the issue of sexual assault. And I do want to say thank you to the survivors who spoke before me. My name is Rachel Carr, and I'm the Executive Director of Uniting Three Fires Against Violence. We're Michigan's Native American Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. We know from the National Institute of Justice study that 56% of Native Americans experience sexual violence. That statistic is important because Michigan is home to the 12 federally recognized tribes and has the highest population of Native Americans east of the Mississippi. We also know from the same study that 96% of the perpetrators were non-Native, which illustrates why jurisdiction is such an important issue. Access to culturally appropriate services is important in Native communities because our lived experience of violence differs from that of non-Natives, and because the issue of jurisdiction creates a system that denies access to justice. For instance, Michigan does not have culturally specific SANE services, and those who could potentially offer that service are legislatively barred from accessing the funds that could establish those services. Thank you for your commitment to improving services to victims of sexual violence. I urge you to consider all victims of sexual assault, many of whom are Native American descent. And I also just want to add the other marginalized communities, the people of color, LGBTQ+ communities, any marginalized communities, we face separate issues that I just want to bring to the table. So thank you for that.
And real quick, I'm sorry, can you, the funding restriction that you referred to, is it state or federal?
It's state.
And where is that? There's a specific line in statute?
Yeah.
Would you mind getting that to my staff so we can work on that?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, I greatly appreciate it, thank you.
Just tribes are generally ineligible to access those funds.
Okay.
So
Well,
that's.
we'd be happy to work on that specifically. Thank you so much. I thought the Sioux was far. I now have Bree Randall from Kirkland, Washington, who I'm told took a red-eye flight to be here today. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, this is working. Hi, my name is Bree Randall, and I am a survivor. I was abused by Larry Nassar in 2004 and reported him to police immediately. Unfortunately, my complaint was dismissed. I was dismissed. It would be 13 years before myself and hundreds of other sister survivors received justice. As you stated, I took the red-eye last night from Seattle to be here today to show my support for legislation that will better protect Michigan's children. It is imperative that we provide comprehensive, evidence-based education to our youth to ensure that they are aware of their rights and feel empowered to speak up if their rights are violated. I wish I would have had more resources at the time of my abuse so I could have pursued justice earlier and not had to suffer for 13 years. I also hope that authority figures and institutions will change their culture of enabling predators and instead empower survivors. Change is needed, and it is needed now. Thank you.
So much.
Where was the report? Where did you make a report
Bernian
to?
Township Police.
Thank you so much. I mean, that kind of, the commitment to be willing to fly across the country to share your story. I mean, it's very, very moving. This is the last card I have. Now, we could still very well have more cards out there. If you would like to speak, my staff is in the back, but if we do not have any more cards after this, we will have to end the hearing. So I just want to let you know, let everyone know that. So if you still would like to speak, if you could get a card to my staff, Kathleen and Lauren are still in the back. Thank you. This is Lindsay Gamet from Lansing, Michigan.
Thank you for your time today. I'm going to set myself a timer because I wrote a bunch of notes and I'm going to try not to go over. I'm Lindsay Gamet. I'm so much more than a survivor of Larry Nassar, but I'm in that boat as well. I was quiet about my abuse for nearly 20 years. When I was somewhere between 10 and 12, I had no idea what sexual assault was. I didn't know that what he was doing to me was completely inappropriate. I was taught to trust doctors, I was taught to trust teachers, and I was taught to trust police officers. I was also told to respect adults. I was not asked if the procedure that was going to be done on me was acceptable. I was not asked if it was okay if it was done to me. I was just told, I'm going to do this procedure on you, and this is what's going to happen. I have a young daughter and a young son. And I'm glad that I feel that I have the tools to be able to speak to them and teach them how to say no, and that their body is theirs and they get to make those decisions for their body. And even if a doctor talks over you, you can still tell them, question things and say no. But I hope that more people have those opportunities, more children to have that understanding. I think it's entirely appropriate for that to be taught in the schools. I think it's necessary. There are still adults, never mind children, who are constantly afraid to speak up. Since I spoke up in court, many of my friends and acquaintances have shared their sacred stories with me that they have not shared publicly, that they have not shared with police. I believe that the effect requiring education about what sexual abuse is and what consent is will bring change to the next generation. I hope that we can create a culture where stories can be shared. I hope we can educate on not only what sexual assault is, but what to do after sexual assault happens. I hope that before rates go down, I hope they go up, because I think what that means is that more stories are being shared. That's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to ask one last time. Does anybody else like to share anything with us today? Yeah. Since we don't have a card for you, I think everyone knows who you are, but if you find, for everyone who does get up, if you would like to say your name and where you're from.
My name's Amanda Tomashow, and I'm from East Lansing. And a lot of you know my story, but I'm here to talk about something else that happened to me. It was 4 years ago, last month. I, not totally prepared, but I woke up one morning with a terrible hangover. And I saw my boyfriend asleep on the couch downstairs, and he had his phone on his chest, and I couldn't find mine anywhere. So I went to call my phone, and when I looked at his phone, I found photos of myself naked, with him doing things to me that I could not remember. And I asked him that day what he had done to me while I was a little bit drunk and passed out. And he told me that I was his girlfriend, so he could do whatever he wanted to me. He thought that because I had consented before, that meant I would consent again. He didn't ask my permission. He took that from me. I didn't have a choice. My voice was silent. I was asleep. I didn't find out about the assault until I saw the photos on his phone. And I still think about those photos all the time. They're burned into my memory, and I had no control. He took something from me that day that I'll never get back. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to fight for everybody else, because it's time that we address this. Yes means yes. A firm yes.
not a wavering yes, not a yes 3 days ago. The only yes that means yes is the one that's there in the moment and it's enthusiastic. And I will keep telling my stories because my truth, what happened to me, if that can help other people find the voice for their truth, then it's worth it. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Amanda and I have become very good friends lately, and sorry, that one, I mean, I was not in anywhere near prepared for that. Thank you for being so brave. I'm just amazed every time. Thank you.
Hello. I didn't prepare anything, but I did have a few things that I wanted to say. So my name is Marianne Siebert. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I am another Nassar survivor. I'm 34 years old. I was abused when I was 13. The whole experience in the public eye, I chose not to be anonymous and gave my, spoke at the first day at Nassar sentencing. A huge part of that experience for me and this whole experience for me has been how prevalent people knowing that I have had an experience like this, how many people came forward to me, just made how tangible or like how huge of an issue this was. It made it tangible for me, and that's been one of the hardest things about going through the experience. Not my own experience, but learning how much pain is out there outside of my own experience. And I think I can speak for a lot of people here that I am not here for myself. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be talking about this. It's not a glamorous thing to talk about. It's not something that you want your face attached to. It's, I think we're all here to prevent and speak for the people that haven't been abused yet and don't yet have their voice. I know that we're pretty much preaching to the choir here because you're here, but I do want to say that whenever I see an article about how much the bills will cost Michigan, like the change, how much making a change will cost, my ask to you all is to, I know that there's a lot of pressure behind closed doors with well-funded voices and people in places of power that don't want to have to deal with this. My ask to you would be to remember all of the people that haven't been abused yet. Remember the people that are young and unprotected, and choose them and prioritize them and remember them. That's it.
We will, I can promise you that. Emily Meinke, doesn't say where from, but.
Thank you. I hadn't planned on speaking today, but I am originally from Mason here. I now live in Sarasota, Florida. But it's imperative, I think, for me to tell my story, or part of my story, to all of you, as well as supporting all my sister survivors. I, as well, am a victim, survivor of Larry Nassar. My abuse started in 1992 and continued through 2006. I carry the guilt with me every single day that I did not say anything, because I could have saved so many hundreds and thousands of women that were abused by him. And there's nothing I can do to change that now except for advocate for change. And I just want to say that I think part of the issue is, part of the solution can be education. I think if you ask a lot of us who were put in that situation, we had no idea that was happening. What was happening was abuse, because we have a conception in our society where rape or abuse is violent, or in a dark parking lot, or, you know, something that you have to resist. And we all had no idea what was going on with our bodies, and that's why it has to start at a young age, and it has to start by educating our children about consent and teach them to question. Because if any of us had questioned, my father was a surgeon in this community. If I had said something to him, even questioned that, if I had any clue that what was going on was abuse at the time, you know, at least he was in a position that he could have talked to some of his faculty and some of his staff and some of the people in this community and maybe done something. But I had absolutely no idea. And so I just want to communicate to all of you that I hope that we can come to a solution, and I hope that we can put something into play where children are educated at a young age that it's not necessarily the scary person in the dark parking lot. It can be somebody that's very close to us, somebody that we trust. So thank you very much.
Stephanie, I know you, but for the rest of the room, please.
For the record, Stephanie Grimes, East Lansing. I am here, obviously, I have a shirt that says I support the sister survivors. But when I was also 5, a very close family, male relative started abusing me. And luckily for me, I had family support. My mom did believe what I said, and we went through the course of action to help me. But I also feel like there needs to be a system in place here where there's support, more support, total bipartisan support. And also, I happened to be in an abusive, the last part of my marriage was very abusive and verbally, and I felt like since I was married, I couldn't tell him no. And so I didn't, and I wish and hope that even if it's a domestic relationship, that if there has come a point in the marriage where it's not healthy, it's not a good marriage anyway, that even spouses have the right to say yes enthusiastically or no, I don't want to be touched by you anymore. It's not worth it. And for me, my marriage, it wasn't worth it. And I was being forced to do things that I probably didn't really want to. And I wish and pray that, you know, little girls and little boys obviously get the education, and to bring it even more to light right now, I gave consent to my little boy in the East Lansing School District to go through their little 5th grade version of sexual education, and I'm hoping that he comes home and asks me questions, and that he feels okay doing that. And we've had extensive discussions since he knows where I stand with the Nassar survivors here today, as I proudly demonstrate my strong support and advocacy for survivors, that you guys understand and are being compassionate by sitting here and listening to us today. And it's very, very complicated to have twice survived. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's the last person. Is that? Let me just say a couple of things. One, I am incredibly moved by what everybody said, and I'm sure the rest of us up here are as well. I wish the entire legislature could sit through this. But I can promise you that the four of us will tell your stories throughout the legislature. Yesterday, in the appropriations hearing, it was last minute, but I came up with an idea. So we're going to try to put what's called boilerplate, some rules in to require the Department of Community Health to include in all their health education curriculum affirmative consent. So if we can't get a hearing on the bill that Tom and I have done, we're going to try to find a different way to at least get it required as part of the code and get it into the curriculum. So that's our next step. We're going to keep fighting. I'm proud that this is a bipartisan effort. Senator Schuitmaker has been amazing throughout all this. So this is not a partisan issue. It just needs, it's stuck in the wrong place. There are bottlenecks in the legislature. Sometimes it's hard. We're going to break those bottlenecks and we're going to get done, and we're going to use all these stories to do it. And I want to thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your patience. I know it's been a very long day for many people. And one last time, I just want to thank my staff who did just an incredible job with all this. Thank you so much. And with that, oh yeah, I'm sorry. Kathleen's much better at her, yeah. I do want to remind people that there's still the opportunity to go see your legislator. Go to their office, leave them a card, and talk to them about these issues. They need to hear it. You know, I think that, I can tell you that, you know, I told the story this morning about how I came to this. It was the Gender Equality Club at Michigan State, and we were talking about those issues. That brought me to the issue. That is not what made me who I am today, this passionate person who this has become an almost obsession for me for the last 2 years. And the reason that is because when I came forward with legislation, people told me their stories because I was somebody who was fighting for it and they wanted to tell me their stories. And the amount of friends, acquaintances, staff that were willing to tell me, you know, that changed me, right? That made me someone who, it's a difference, caring about it peripherally and caring about it in the way that I do now is different. And I think hearing stories makes that happen. So if you're able to, it's obviously I can only ask you to do something you're willing to do, but if you're willing to do it, talking to your legislator and telling your stories, I think is incredibly powerful into making this happen. So we would really appreciate that. But other than that, I want to thank you for all of your amazing, beautiful, gut-wrenching stories. And really thank you for all your bravery, and I'm going to end this hearing. Thank you so much.
Do you mind if I?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Tonya.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that you all are beautiful souls, and I thank you. And even if you didn't speak and have a personal story, thank you because you are here. Never underestimate that one person can change the world, and I equate all of you to that. And a lot of you are probably too young to remember, but the guy that stood up in Tiananmen Square in front of the tank, you all are that person. And I think that we will make the world a better place for those that come after us. And, you know, I firmly support Senator Hertel's bill with affirmative consent. I also wanted to say that Michigan is leading the way in terms of rape kit tracking system. So that you won't, somebody brought up about the backlog of the rape kits, so that there will never be a backlog of rape kits, and that every victim out there will be able to enter a tracking number, like much like you do when you buy something from Amazon or FedEx, and you enter it and you can find out where your rape kit is that the legislature has put money forth towards that. Every legislator up here supports that new system that will be going and being implemented in the next year or two. And there is a pilot program, and we firmly believe in all of you. And thank you for your time today. And I will say, I think the one word, if there is one word to come out, is be empowered and go out and make a difference.
Thank you, and I apologize, my brain is not exactly working anymore. Senator Knezek, who is a co-sponsor, would also like to say something.
I'll just be very, very quick, and I know you've heard it, umpteen different times, but from me, I would want to say thank you to everybody for coming forward and sharing their stories. Obviously, it's something that few people understand, the gravity and the severity and how difficult that can be coming forward. But what we've seen, I think, even in the hearing today, where folks felt just in the course of an hour empowered to come forward and share their stories because of the strength that was on display here today. And I'll just share briefly a quick personal story. We had the, what's the word I'm looking for? Not a press release, press conference. I'm struggling today, too. Press conference on this legislation, and then I'd gone home, and we were at a family dinner, and a member of my family came out and decided to share her story as well. Hadn't heard the story and hadn't shared it in over 58 years, and saw the survivors talking on TV, and she felt that now was time for her to come forward for that too. So for my family's sake, I thank you for that strength and that resiliency. And really for the legislators too, helping educate us along the way as well. I've frankly really enjoyed it, even when I'm trying to talk about this issue and someone will pull me aside and say, David, when you say it that way, you think you mean this, but you actually mean that. So maybe think about how you yourself are articulating this word. Don't use this word, use that word. And it helps us become better, I think, advocates and allies in that process as well. So you guys are also being just phenomenal teachers for each and every one of us. So I thank you for that, and pledge to continue working with everybody in this room moving forward as well. I think it's really important work, and I know that we're all committed to following through on that just as you are. So thank you.
I want to thank, again, the legislators for showing up. I want to thank everyone who was willing to share their story. And with that, the hearing on consent is done.